The Phoenix Suns brought two of their star players back on Thursday night in the preseason, winning the DeAndre Aton Bowl on the road in Portland. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, we'll break the game down. Players, patterns, more. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Suns.com and the host of the Just Basketball Show, wherever you get your podcasts. A big thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to close out your week. Happy Friday. Another one in the books. 1 week closer to the regular season. Suns basketball, less than 2 weeks away. I hope you're excited, because I am very excited. Today's show is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Bet $5, get $200 back in bonus bets. Again, that's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. If you're finding the show for the first time, we're free and available everywhere. Just hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button, become an everyday, or get locked onto the Suns right along with me from now through the rest of time. The reason that I bring the subscribing up, which, I do that every episode, but specifically today, we are going to do a good old-fashioned game recap, and I have not done one of those in a long time. So you're getting the real deal here today. We're rehearsing, we're touching up as we get ready for opening night. Suns Warriors on the road. It's going to be fantastic. But tonight was actually a little bit of a glimpse of the regular season in another way. And so where we start these recap shows typically is with the big takeaway of the game. And in this particular case, the big takeaway of the game was what it will look like when the Suns play without one of their stars. And I don't say that to insinuate injuries. I think if you've been listening long enough, watching long enough, you know that I kind of don't buy the injury-prone thing for anybody on this roster outside of really Kevin Durant. I mean, I guess you could say Jusuf Nurkic, just being how tall he is and everything else, being 30, but it's really just Durant. Either way, they're going to rest guys. They're going to be strategic about things. They're going to try to peak at the right time, end of March into early April. And tonight, without Bradley Beal in the game, with just Booker and Durant and Gordon filling in, and in this case, Nasir Little, I kind of doubt that we will see him starting often in the regular season, but a different type of look tonight. We got a glimpse of what that will be. And so, look, I think you have to be pretty thrilled with what it looked like. They scored 76 points in the first half. I mean, what else really is there? All three of the kind of playmakers in that starting lineup had 5+ assists in 21 minutes apiece, those being Durant, Nurkic, and Booker. That's pretty incredible. They put up as a starting unit, it looks like 20 3-pointers, and they made 10 of them, if I'm counting all that up really quickly, accurately, and the starting lineup only turned the ball over one time. So, pretty good, right? And I think that's valuable, I liked that they gave Little the opportunity tonight. I liked that, somebody like Udoka Azubuike played. I liked that Jordan Goodwin obviously played a little bit. I didn't study him, let's say, or watch him closely enough, so I'll wait to really dive into him too much. But it was a good mix-up, not only in that starting unit, but you saw the ripple effects below that. And the reality just is, of course, it's preseason. Let's get that out of the way. I don't think Udoka Azubuike is necessarily going to be playing a lot of minutes come regular season. I don't think Keon Johnson or Saben Lee or even Jordan Goodwin necessarily going to be playing a lot of minutes. But the point of all of this is just to say that you saw the adjustment come quickly, and I'll talk about him more, but somebody like Eric Gordon, right? Just to have the luxury of that. 20 points, 8 of 10 from the field. Again, I'll dive into him more specifically, but This is going to be normal for the Suns this year, to have those games where an unlikely starter steps in. Somebody like, let's not say it's going to be, let's leave Azubuike out of it. Let's say Chimezie Metu, right? He started the last game, didn't start tonight, but still plays his 19 minutes. Not quite as productive overall, but that's going to be the kind of in and out that I think we see. Even somebody like Gordon, you're probably not going to see play, every single possible game. There's no reason to do that. He's also, into his 30s. I was listening to an NBA podcast this week. I think it was The Mismatch from The Ringer. And they were discussing, I'm so bad at crediting because it easily could not be that one, so apologies. But they were having the argument of, despite all of the hoopla around the Suns bench, especially after the Beal trade. If you just have a freeze frame of the minute the Beal trade happens, but before actual free agency has begun, there was a lot of panic about how in the world are the Suns going to add additional talent of any kind. And they did, of course. And we're seeing it in the preseason. But the conversation that they were having was, now having seen some of that depth come together and obviously starting to see how it's going to look on the preseason court, is the Suns' depth actually better than, particularly, I think the argument that they were having, or the debate that they were having, was Boston and Milwaukee, especially because those teams obviously had to kind of dip into the treasure trove to get Damian Lillard and get Drew Holiday. And it's an interesting conversation to have. I really do think so, because, the Celtics are going to be relying on O'Shea Brissett and Peyton Pritchard, who they just signed to an extension, and Luke Cornett and Sam Hauser. I would say, trying to take the hometown bias out of it, to me, those teams, those guys are not as reliable as what the Suns now have. The Bucks, Cam Payne, who is here for a while, we know how that experience can sometimes go. And then, of course, Jay Crowder, another experience we're familiar with here. You obviously have Bobby Portis, which is a big difference maker. The Suns would, kill to have a player like that. But aside from him, Javon Carter is even gone now, and they had to trade Grayson Allen to Phoenix to get Damian Lillard. So the Nuggets, there's question marks there, right? Would you rather have Reggie Jackson at his age, or Peyton Watson, who you're hoping takes a step forward, or Zeke Naji, or some of the Suns guys? I think the more we see it, and the more that we see how the stars and the scheme and everything else is really able to get the best out of some of these guys, I think it's going to become less and less of a debate. So by the end of the season, we'll have our answer. Right now, it's just a fun what if. Let's talk about two specific players as we keep it rolling. We're going to the moment of the game next. Usually we flip-flop these. I lied to you guys. The moment of the game usually comes first, but look, it's preseason. We're not going to pretend like the competitiveness in any one portion was all that high level at the end of the day. But we'll do moment of the game, and then we'll close out with some Eric Gordon talk, because he was incredible tonight. First, today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use, and there's a wide range of bets to make, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Cardinals underdogs in Los Angeles this weekend. We have WNBA Finals Game 3 on Sunday. Can the Aces close it out? NBA futures, including the Suns over-under in wins, which I believe is like 47.5, if I'm remembering correctly. Lots of good stuff. Lots of fun bets. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the football season with FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Let's keep it rolling. Moment of the game. We're going to the second quarter, about midway through. It wasn't one particular play, but it was a series of plays where you saw the impact of Jusuf Nurkic really start to jump out. He ran 2 or 3 or 4 side pick and rolls, side dribble handoffs, really, with Kevin Durant. And that empty pick and roll is something that, wow, sorry, YouTube audience, that blur was bothering me and I could not get it to stop. It is fixed now. You're welcome. Hopefully you made it this long and you didn't get driven crazy by it before that. I apologize for my camera, but we got it to work. That is not the moment of the game. Might be the moment of the podcast, but the Nurkic-Durant two-man game. Nurkic busted some of these fun looks out with Bates Diop, I want to say in the first preseason game, but in this one, it was Durant. Both he and Booker played a little bit more, which is helpful, and you just see the impact of having a big man who can not only set screens, not only comfortable with the ball in his hands, but also can pass and is enough of a shooting threat that he's not going to be sagged off of. And not just a shooting threat, although that helps, but also even just a dribble drive threat. Just a scoring threat is maybe the best way to kind of sum it up. Because that is another way to space the floor for star players like Durant, right? It does get pretty simple. It does get pretty basic. Have a two-man game with floor spacing and let Durant's gravity and talent win out. Like, okay, not exactly rocket science to cook that up, but it goes a long way to have the particular type of skill set that Nurkic has. And again, he doesn't have to pass it. He's not just there to set the screen, hand the ball off, and get out of the way, right? He can manipulate it a little bit. He can kind of use his own strengths to his advantage and keep the defense guessing, really, is the best way to put it at the end of the day, And so 5 assists for him tonight to 1 turnover, 6 assists for Durant, 6 of 8 from the field for Nurkic. I thought he made a couple of nice plays, on the short roll as well, like he has been. He hit the 1-3 from the left wing when he was left open, which is what you want to see. I mean, I think Nasir Little made the whip around pass, and Nurkic was just there and canned it. Confidently rose up and took it. So the offense is coming together. It is going to be simple. It is going to be basic. There were plenty of Durant and Booker mid-range pull-up shots, easy transition buckets, all that stuff. We'll talk about the Gordon aspect as we move into the last segment. But last thing on Nurkic, because I did go at him defensively for a little bit on the first preseason recap show, and his defense specifically. I think one thing I meant to say in the first segment is we're just going to have to get used to these games are going to be high scoring, right? Because the Suns scored 76 points in the first half. The Trailblazers scored 65, and that's not even a great team. Now, the second quarter got a little quieter when their starters weren't on the court, but it's just going to be there. And so with that said, and the fact that I did criticize Nurkic plenty in the first game, I do want to highlight one other aspect from tonight. And it happens to intersect with one of the funny things about this game, which was, of course, DeAndre Aton. And not just the fact that Aton was active and playing and everything else, but played pretty well, in my opinion. And the Nurkic connection, the part that I want to bring up there is the Suns were pretty aggressive and pretty confident and comfortable executing basically a blitz on the ball handlers when it was Scoot and Aton or whoever it was, Simons and Aton running a pick and roll, often kind of a side pick and roll, and they were just blitzing the ball handler and forcing Aton to catch the ball on the roll and do something with it. He had a nice and one finish. I believe he had 2 finishes, maybe 1 pass. He also caught the ball off of a mismatch and kicked back out off of a double team. It was just a lot of things where it's like, we'll see how long that lasts, and it's funny that you would bust it out against your former team. Things we all would, scratch our heads or, maybe more like slap ourselves in the face watching with Aton the past 5 seasons here. But as it relates to Nurkic, I just think the best you're going to ask for of him is that he executes the scheme, uses his size and length, and that it's good enough, right? I mean, I think Jeremy Grant had a couple of closeout attacking moments where he attacked closeouts and was able to finish over Nurkic. One was like a a bank shot. One, I think, was an and one finish. Obviously, these moments where he just got out of the play and Aton was able to catch it. And you're not at that point relying on the center to get back into the play no matter who it is. Peak Dwight Howard's not really getting back in that one. But the Suns, if Durant's not on the court, they're not going to have that secondary rim protection to help and be that weak side low man to disrupt what a player like Aton does after catching the ball. They're going to give that up. They've chosen this route. Maybe the defense gets better over time and you see an early rotation, or you see even a smaller player get into help position in that moment, even if it's not Durant. These little things will help, but whether it's in drop, whether it is blitzing like he did today, or just standing at the basket trying to protect the rim off of a closeout, it's not going to be elite. It just isn't, but I think the Suns are banking on the fact that, an Aton catch and dunk or a Jeremy Grant, kind of flip bank shot, those are things that they're going to be okay living with. And sometimes it'll be a 40-point quarter. Sometimes it'll be a 30-point quarter. Sometimes it'll be a 15 or 20-point quarter like we saw in the second and fourth. So you hope it gets better over the course of the season. You hope that the execution and the awareness and IQ of everybody helps a little bit, but I do think early in the season these are going to be high-scoring games, and as much as Nurkic can have those moments where he's making somebody like Durant's life a little bit easier, he's going to give it back, and that's just what this is. Can they fix that over the course of the season with internal development? Can they fix that with another trade? Do they just bench Nurkic at a certain point? It's way too early to know any of that, but that's all on the table, and it's going to be an interesting ride to get there. Let's close out the show with some of our recap segments. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you I've forgotten each and every one of them, but we're going to start with Box Score Oddity, which is the one that I remember, and it is going to start with Eric Gordon, who was lights out tonight. All that after one more break. Closing out the show, typically, as I said, we're doing a dry run of the normal recap formula and structure here, but normally, for years, I had a lot of the same end of recap show, final segment bits, and they're all gone. I've forgotten most of them. It has been about almost 6 months 5 months, let's say, since I did a recap show. I'm sorry. I remember Box Score Oddity. You can drop them in the YouTube comments if you remember. I mean, one of them was Bridges Breakout Watch. That was from a while ago. He broke out. That happened already. Aton free throw counter or something like that, I think might have been one of them. We had and then a lot of them are just, I didn't forget, but they're gone. Facundo Campazzo All-Stars, that was the guys that Chris Paul would basically eviscerate. We had the pigeon of the game, but, this team's going to be a little different. They're not going to, kind of run teams through the ringer with ball movement and stuff quite as much. It's just going to be a lot of easier looks. So we're going to have to find our own. We're going to have to find little tricks from Durant and Beal and Nurkic and Watanabe and Frank Vogel and whatever to come up with our own. But let's just do the one I know, which is Box Score Oddity, which goes to Eric Gordon tonight. And the oddity is just 8 of 10 from the field. I mean, it's really not much more complicated than that. The guy is one of the coolest evolutions in recent NBA history. Did you expect me to say something so absolute and big picture on the last segment of a third preseason game recap? Well, I did. You're welcome. It's not like it's all that rare or unique for Gordon, but this is a guy who, when Suns fans first cared about him, was a star player, really, right? He went back in the Chris Paul trade, and he was a high draft pick and had the makings of a creator, a signature two-guard. Had some injuries early on, obviously just the nature of his game, not being an elite passer, not being a super great athlete, being a little on the smaller side. He never turned into that All-NBA caliber player. But what he did turn into, especially by the Harden Rockets years, was an absolutely incredible secondary offensive player and defensive player. Won Sixth Man of the Year. And for a period there in 2015 to 2020 range, he was one of the most valuable role players in the entire league, especially considering how Houston played. Switching and being able to use his strength and size to his advantage, deep spacing, but also the ability to attack a closeout, to make the right play, to handle the ball a little bit, and go in transition, all these different things. It's just cool to see the evolution of a player who comes in thinking he's going to be a star, not only sacrifices, but does so willingly and enthusiastically enough to become an active positive as a different kind of player for another decade plus beyond what we thought, his kind of fading when that started, right? So you got to give a lot of credit to that guy. But tonight showed that, right? He makes instantaneous decisions. I don't even think quick is descriptive enough for how quickly Gordon processes. Walked the dog before the podcast and the allergies come out. Apologies, everybody. Instantaneous decisions. He is either going to let it fly, drive past the closeout defender, or keep the ball moving. And even if he does attack the closeout and drive into the paint, he knows where the ball's going. Is it going to be a layup? Is it going to be trying to draw a foul? Is it going to be a kick-out pass? And for somebody who plays off of other stars, that's plenty. That is enough. And it just is a testament to what we said at the beginning of the show. I say we like I have a co-host or something. What I said at the beginning of the show today, which is the depth and the balance that this roster has somehow come upon is pretty great. And Gordon's a humongous reason why. I think he is going to rack up maybe more starts than we expect this season. It wouldn't surprise me if he had 20 or 30 starts this year. I think no matter who it is, 1 through 4, who's out, you could see Gordon potentially being the guy to start the game. They could start Beal, Booker, Gordon, Okogie, Nurkic one night, I think. And they'll obviously start Gordon in place of Beal, Booker, and Okogie, or whoever ends up replacing Okogie if that fluctuates. So he made his shots tonight. That's the box score oddity, but it's not really an oddity. That's what this guy is. He's a perfect role player, and he seems to be finding his rhythm immediately in Phoenix. All right, shorter show today as we had last time, recapping a preseason game. I don't exactly think there's 30 minutes there, but this was a fun one, and I think we'll probably get Beal back in the next game, see who else we get to watch Monday. Brandon Duenas will be here on Monday to get us ready for that game and break down anything that happens over the weekend. We'll recap that game Monday, march our way through another week, and then after that, Suns regular season basketball is back, so hit follow, hit subscribe wherever you're finding the show. Keep it rolling. Become an everydayer. Season is just around the corner. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Monday. Tomorrow? Monday? Monday.